morning, and welcome to the virtual services of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Shenandoah Valley for February 21st, 2021. My name is Spence Voskew, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. These are words from Howard Thurman. Look well to the growing edge. All around us worlds are dying and new worlds are being born. All around us life is dying and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there shall be new leaves, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. It is the extra breath from the exhausted lung, the one more thing to try when all else has failed, the upward reach of life when weariness closes in upon all endeavor. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on when times are out of joint, and men have lost their reason and source of confidence when worlds crash and dreams whiten into ash. The birth of the child, life's most dramatic answer to death. This is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge. Please join us after the service for our Zoom coffee hour with instructions at the end of the service. I'd also like to remind you that on February 28th, after the service at 12 noon, we will hold a Zoom meeting of the congregation to discuss whether or not to adopt the 8th UU principle, which is the subject of today's message. Your board will also host upcoming in-person, socially distanced meetings at the UU, for those who prefer not to discuss it on Zoom. A vote will be taken at the congregational meeting in June. Instructions on joining the meeting can be found in the weekly current newsletter. And now let the service begin.
Okay, welcome everybody. Man, this is the shortest month, but it is going fast. This is for the 21st of February. So either our memory or my memory is getting better or time is just flying. So be that as it may, welcome to our service here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Shenandoah Valley. Before we begin, one quick announcement. You know we're going to be having conversations around the 8th principle. We're going to have a conversation on February 28th after the service. For those of you who don't like Zoom or don't know how to use Zoom or just don't want to deal with Zoom, I don't know the schedule is yet, but we're going to have meetings here at the church if you feel that it's safe enough and you're comfortable with that. So having said that, let me share these opening words with you. We are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, with hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. And together we all gather and we care for the earth, and we work for friendship and peace in our world, in this world, not the world to come, but in this world. All righty. Our first hymn this morning is the African American national anthem, if you will. Hymn number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Hymn number 149. Reading this morning in the back of the gray hymnal, reading number 462, the words of activist and artist Paul Robeson. He says, "I shall take my voice wherever there are those who want to hear the melody of freedom or the words that might inspire hope and courage in the face of despair and fear. My weapons are peaceful, for it is only by peace that peace can be attained. The song of freedom will and must prevail." Also, this Sunday is the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. Malcolm was assassinated February 21st, 1965, at the Audubon Ballroom in Harlem. These words are his. "I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who is for it or against it. For you see, I'm a human being first and foremost, and as such, I'm for whoever and whatever benefits humanity as a whole." This is the time in the service now when we invite you to share a joy, a concern, a sorrow. This is the time to unburden yourself, if you will. And so with that being said, the floor is now yours.
I had one emailed concern from Jessica Thomas this week. She says that she fell on Tuesday coming down her porch ramp going to physical therapy. She's been in a lot of pain on her left side, which is her bad knee and hip. She went to physical therapy again on Thursday morning and found out that she has a sprained ankle. It hurts for her to move it, and she wishes that you would please keep her in your thoughts and hope for her that it heals quickly. We're thinking about you, Jessica.
For those of you who, for whatever reason, did not feel like sharing, know that we keep you in our hearts and in our minds, and we are a phone call, a text, an email away. Keep that in mind. We're here if you need us. Our meditation this morning. We will have the time of quiet. Please center yourselves as you are comfortable and see fit. We realize that through short-sightedness and bad judgment, we often fall short of the goals that we set for ourselves. We are human. We fail. We hurt others. But may we know that there is forgiveness and healing from human beings who hurt, who, like ourselves, make mistakes, and with whom we are joined in this experiment called humankind. It is through the love and acceptance of others that we are able to be the selves we truly are and to turn that unique selfhood into the service for others. Let us rejoice in life and in all reality, knowing that each of us has gifts to offer and a unique place in the ongoing stream of being. The mystery is that we are connected even when we are apart, even when we feel apart. Let us rejoice in the common life that makes the many one. Life is good. It is rich with possibilities. It's not good for everyone. We know that, which makes it all precious if we are fortunate enough to say that life is good. We give thanks for our portion of that good and trust that each new day will bring strength, courage, wisdom, and renewal. The rest is silence. And so it is. Well, it's that time, isn't it? I am only one, but still, I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. And in that spirit, we now collect this morning's offering. I thank you for your generosity. It is always deeply and was deeply appreciated. And so, our next hymn, the UU National Anthem, if you will, hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Spirit of Life, hymn number 123. All righty, let's get to it here. I want to let's revisit the eighth principle. We're going to have discussions about it. We've already had some discussions about it, people giving their opinions and what have you. And so I just want to go over how it came to be, why it came to be, and then I will leave it up to you to decide. And all we want you to do is vote your heart when the time comes, and we'll see if we can adopt it or not. As many of you may remember, back in December of 2019, December 4th to be exact, I flew to Kentucky to speak at the UU church there. I was asked to speak and give an anti-racism workshop. It's a very lovely looking building with a lively and active congregation. The minister, I never got a chance to meet because he had the flu that weekend that I was there. But we spoke on the phone a few times, and I could feel, even through his illness, a very dynamic, erudite individual. He's young, he's married, he's a gay man, and he's full of ideas and an activist intellectual spirit. Now that congregation, had decided that its identity as a congregation, as a church, was to focus on anti-racism. That is the mission of that church. Yes, they do other things. They feed the hungry, they clothe the naked, but their battle is for social justice. And it is a commendable and worthy goal. We have sometimes heard that the 11th commandment is, thou shalt not get caught. Perhaps the 12th will be added as well, but we seem to be having problems as a species in dealing with simply 10. And our culture talks about our Constitution, for instance, as if it were a document that is fixed in stone, although it still has antiquated language and ideas, but it's a great beginning for this experiment that we call democracy. And I say all of that to say that documents are living, breathing things. And so they can always be tweaked and brought up to date. I say this to say that many of you know that the UUA is encouraging congregations to adopt an 8th UU principle. It's not mandatory, it is encouraged, and so we have an opportunity as a community to see if we want to adopt it. Now, this is what it reads. It reads that we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and other institutions. This is how it reads for now. I say for now because there were some people who wanted us to tweak it, but it's not for us to tweak. And I will give you information here. You can write the UUA, you can write some of the people who crafted this and give your opinions. But I don't think we have the authority to tweak it if we decide to in fact use it. But to my knowledge, the Kentucky congregation has voted to adopt this principle, and other congregations in the district. I will give you a listing of some of them. Black Lives UU, known as Blue, collectively encourages all UUs to advocate for the adoption of the 8th principle, articulating the commitment to dismantling white supremacy within our denominations. Now, where did this come from originally? Paula Cole Jones from Joseph Priestley District originally. I have a book of hers that I use sometimes when I do diversity trainings. She was director of racial and social justice. She developed the idea of the existence of 2 different paradigms in UU circles. She says the UU 7 principles and beloved community is what she's striving for. She says after working with congregations on these issues for over 15 years, she realized that a person can believe they are being a good UU by simply following the 7 principles without even thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. Her evidence is most UU congregations are primarily European American in membership, culture, especially music, and leadership, even when located near diverse communities. She says she realized that an 8th principle was needed to correct this. And she talked with someone called, his name is Bruce Pollock Johnson. So there's another name. There's Paula Jones and Brother Bruce Johnson, if you want to contact. I'm sure the UUA website, or if you call the headquarters there, they can give you some information. Those 2 came together. Bruce put together an initial draft in 2013, and the 2 of them worked with a group of anti-racist activists in the Joseph Priestley District to redefine and to craft it, to refine it. Bruce's congregation is the UU Church of the Restoration in Philadelphia. His church is in Philadelphia. He incorporated into their covenant at the time. So he incorporated the eighth principle. And in May 2017, they adopted it for themselves and recommended that the UUA adopt it. UUs and the UUA, she says, they say, we say, have done very good work in fighting racism, such as during the Civil Rights Movement and in the 1990s, passing a resolution in 1997 at GA, after a precursor revolution in 1992 to become an anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural organization. But the funding and support started to wane in the 2000s. I remember that because I was training as an anti-racism trainer for our denomination, and then the bottom fell out and that accountability mechanism failed us. UUs also have a mixed record historically in other areas of racial justice. We had people on both sides of the abolition question, including people like Jefferson, who was a slaveholder. And Unitarians were proponents of eugenics, leading to some of the racial extremes of Nazism and apartheid in South Africa. Yes, there were UUs involved in that. For people identified as white, it is too easy to ignore these issues, which is exactly what keeps the system of racism in our society alive and worsening as we speak. So we need to decenter whiteness, is what is being said here, in other dominant cultures in UUism. And so the feeling is that the eighth principle came from a feeling that we need something to renew our commitment as UUs to this work, to hold ourselves accountable and to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. And I want to say again that I was against it at first. I said the 7 principles will do, but I've since changed my mind after some research and some forethought and some meditation and contemplation and talking to other people. But I want to be clear, because it was intimated that because I'm a person of color, that I too am trying to push this through, that I have a bias toward it. I would love to see it happen, but I will survive if it doesn't. My argument was that, are we going to do this with all the marginalized groups? And I said that would be, I wouldn't be for that. But if we have to, we have to. If we have to have something for other marginalized groups at another principle, then that's something I don't have a problem with. Why now is one of the questions. Well, the UUA had gone through a crisis, you may remember, related to the hiring practices, especially related to whites being hired over qualified Latinx candidates. This was a few years ago, and it resulted in the resignation of then UUA President Peter Morales. In response to this crisis, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, BLUE, and diverse revolutionary UU ministries, otherwise known as DRUM, I was a member of that group many years ago. They came together to endorse the eighth principle. BLUE's main point is that the UUA devoted in 1997 at the GA Summit to become an anti-oppression institution. And good progress was made. I know, I was there, with programs including the Journey Toward Wholeness, the Jubilee Anti-Racism Training workshops, process evaluation at meetings, and multicultural accounting services. And in the early 2000s, funding and support for this began to decline. And so not the recent, now it's been a few years, but the hiring crisis was not surprising in light of what had gone on. And so BLUE, Black Lives UU, is holding all of the UUA accountable to that commitment and expresses disappointment that the eighth principle had not already been supported and midwifed by UUA leadership. UU funding and focus in the last decade shifted toward in their words, shallow diversity rather than deep multicultural beloved community, and structural change. UU support for the movement of Black Lives Matter has been encouraging, and the best way for us to truly support racial justice in any significant way is to purge ourselves and our institutions of the culture and practices of white supremacy. And so the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration and the criminal justice system replacing the older systems of slavery and Jim and Jane Crow laws, police violence against people of color, recent Supreme Court decisions on voting rights and affirmative action, and the election of Donald Trump, openly supporting white supremacists, show that the country is moving in a dangerous direction and moving quickly. UUs need to make a strong leadership stand to reverse these trends. The next question they address is why the UUA in the United States? Whiteness and chattel slavery was invented in the U.S. at the same time that modern Unitarian and Universalism was being created. Unitarians originally were largely from New England European American elite areas, often did not treat Native Americans well, befitted from slavery, and some were leaders in the eugenics movement, promoting birth control for people of color because they were seen as inferior. Some Unitarian and Universalist ministers, more Universalist, since Universalism was more of a working class movement, spoke out against slavery, but did little as a denomination. We did little as a denomination. And after the Trayvon Martin verdict, many UU ministers said nothing about it in church. UUs did a very good job during the civil rights movement, largely at the request of Dr. King, and we should be very proud of that. In the late 60s, a promising movement was supported by the UUA, but then it became defunded because of a financial crisis, leading to a terrible conflict, after which many African Americans left the UUA. It was before my time, but I remember studying about it. There was a long period of silence until the late 80s and early 90s, then excellent progress after that for about a decade or so. But we have regressed, they say, leading to the UUA president resigning over hiring inclusivity issues. And I'm saying they say because I'm using information that I researched from them, them being the people who put this together. And so some people asked, what is the beloved community? This was a phrase that King used a lot towards the end of his life. Beloved community happens when people of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care that seeks to realize justice within the community and the broader world. What does it mean to be accountable? White UUs hold themselves accountable to communities of color to make sure whites do what they say they will do. And in practice, that can mean having a people of color caucus within congregations, districts, etc., to discern and express needs and concerns of the rest of the community. Black UUs hold each other accountable and help each other see and dismantle signs of internalized racism. So we need an effective mechanism or structure to ensure this. The same thing with other modes of oppression. And so this is about the spirit of our living tradition. UU congregations are being asked to study, adopt, propose, and discuss the proposed eighth principle. For those who argue that the principles aren't supposed to change, well, since the merger in 1961, the principles have undergone several changes. In 1974, 1985, and 1995, the principles we have today look nothing like those in 1961. They are an expression of a living, breathing, and changing tradition. For those who say the eighth principle is too wordy, I've heard that too. We are being asked to adopt and promote the spirit of the eighth principle and not to get overly involved in wordsmithing. It is very likely that the final draft of the principle, if adopted, will look quite different. Our existing 7 principles imply this eighth principle, but they do not explicitly hold us accountable for addressing these oppressions. Dismantling racism, white supremacy, and other oppressions requires work at the personal and institutional levels. The UU principles were designed to be dynamic, but not a fixed creed. It means that we want to always continue to be educating ourselves, to be cultivating and excavating, to exploring truth and raising our consciousness. Another thing I learned from the Kentucky Church was that none of the 7 principles, and it didn't cross my mind, it was just pointed out to me, mentions love. And the 8th principle speaks of the beloved or the beloved community, which brings our commitment of love to the forefront. And so again, I'm bringing this information back to you so we can revisit it. I bring it back to you for your consideration and thought. The UUA website pretty much explains much of what I said here. That's where I got some of the information, and from speaking with other people and the minister and the congregants at the Kentucky UU congregation. A brief list of UU congregations that have adopted the 8 principles so far. It may be more now. The Restoration Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the UU Church of Honolulu, Hawaii, All Souls, a church in Washington, D.C., the church in Annapolis, Maryland, the UU Church of Goodloe, Maryland, the UU Church of Richmond, Virginia, the UU Church of Rockville, Maryland, the UU Washington Crossings Church, the UU Church in Washington's Crossing, New Jersey, the UU Church of Frederick, Maryland, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania UU Church, Arlington, Virginia UU Church, the Davies, Maryland UU congregation, Germantown, Pennsylvania UU, Lubbock, Texas UU, and the Third Church of Chicago Unitarian Universalist. We have much to think about. Much to think about and much to do on our journeys as UUs, and most importantly, as human beings. Search your hearts and minds as we go forward. This topic will, of course, come up again. And on the 28th, we will have a discussion. Let us be open to where this trail will lead us. Our closing hymn this morning, hymn number 151, I Wish I Knew How. I Wish I Knew How, hymn number 151. Our closing words for the service. Again, thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us. We are a people called into community. We bring many gifts, and we are stronger than we know. We hate violence. We will not be divided against ourselves. We appeal to reason, goodwill, and we answer to the spirit of all life. Amen. Thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.